and Robin Proper apparently was also saying stuff about your mum. So if you're quite happy to take that, well then, that's fine. Not for me to say. Not for me to say. I'm just a neutral observer. But if you want to go a bit hysterical, create some headlines, be really unhappy. That'll keep me in a job. Yeah, the first team we ever faced in Europe was Nice, OGC Nice, the Olympic Gymnast Club of Nice. We're playing them again tonight in Europe. The second team we ever faced in Europe was Saint-Etienne, another French side. The first team we faced en route to our 1971-72 European Cup Winners' Cup, the only time we won a European trophy, the only European season we had that finished in ultimate success was the 1971-72 run to the Cup Winners' Cup final, and the Barcelona Bears doing the business against Moscow Dynamo in that final. But the first team we played in that run was Rennes, Stade Rennais, and they play in red and black, and they're French. The last two times we have reached a European final, 2008, 2022, the run included a home gubbing by Lyon, Olympic Lyonnais, and they've gubbed us at home this season already. The French, this is the country that invented the World Cup, Jules Rimet. They invented the European Championships. It's called the Henri Delaunay Trophy. Maybe Henri Delaunay's Belgian, maybe he's Swiss, maybe he's Luxembourgeois, maybe he's Canadian, maybe he's from Quebec or whatever. But no, he's French, as is Gabriel Ano, the guy from L'Equipe, France Football. Ballon d'Or doesn't sound very Italian, doesn't sound very Spanish. Ballon d'Or, it's the golden ball, it's the European Footballer of the Year. That comes to French football. Gabriel Ano also at the centre of bringing about the European Cup, as was floodlights, as was the development of fairly easy air travel round about Europe. But Gabriel Ano got the thing organised. The French are at the heart of absolutely everything. It took them forever. The French have also got the first guy ever to play for two different teams in the final of the European Cup / Champions League, Raymond Kopa, obviously Polish descent, but famously French. Raymond Kopa played for Real Madrid in the 57 European Cup final. That was the first season we were in it, and that was a year after he played for Stade de Reims against Real Madrid in the 1956, the very first European Cup final. He played alongside 1958. He played alongside Just Fontaine, although he's from North Africa, from the Maghreb, really, where he was born, but French international, and he's the guy with still the record for goals scored in a single tournament of the World Cup. 13 goals they got. It took Gerd Müller 2 World Cups to overtake Just Fontaine's record, his tally for goals in the World Cup finals. The finals of the World Cup, but it's still, even Just Fontaine, they won the third place playoff against the Germans, hammered the Germans, and that they lost the semi-final in 58 to Brazil. They lost the semi-final in 82. They lost the semi-final of the World Cup in 86. Only 1984, the first time they actually got to the final of a major competition, the Euros. It was in France. They won that thing, and then they won the Euros again in 2000, lost the final in 2016, won a World Cup in 98, won it again in 2018, lost the last World Cup final. So finally, it took the French towards the end of the 20th century and well into the 21st century before they finally realised the kind of greatness that they were due, not just because of the population, the infrastructure, the amount of great stadiums they've got in that country, but also the fact that they seem to have invented half of football. I try to do a wee coincidence thing. I hit you with the Hamburg Olympiacos thing in the pre-season friendlies that we had under Michael Beale against both those clubs and how it pertained to a home game for Olympiacos. I tried to do a big, my favourite coincidence with it. I thought it was a coincidence, but nobody. I've tried it 2 times on Twitter. I'm going to hit it up on Blue Sky now. Nobody, no reaction whatsoever. And I tried it on this pod last and get no reaction to that whatsoever. So, it's obviously no hitting home. So I'm going to try something else. We've got Jules Rimet. I'm talking World Cup, right? It's the French. We're in France. Let's go for it. Jules Rimet, obviously the guy that invents the World Cup or finally gets it up and going. He has the trophy that's named after him, the Jules Rimet trophy, in the bag on the boat going from Europe to South America. First World Cup finals are in Uruguay. It's 1930. Nobody's taking a flight in those days. So I think the France team, the Lucien Laurent scores the first goal ever in World Cup finals for France against Mexico, I think, in the first game. Anyway, the French national team, the Belgian national team, and the Romanian national team, they're the only European sides that went to the first World Cup. They're all on a boat, along with Jules Rimet and the trophy, the same boat, and they head over to Brazil they stop off at Brazil, pick up the Brazil national team, just as well, because that keeps Brazil's record of being the only side to have appeared in every single edition of the World Cup finals. They get them, and then they head down to Uruguay, and they go and have the first World Cup, and at that first World Cup, the top scorer scores in the final, but Argentina lose the final, but it's Argentina's Guillermo Stabil. The boat, the ship that they were on, it was sailing from Genoa to Buenos Aires. After that tournament, the ship comes, was it the SS Verde, and that's obviously being a Rangers fan. Verde means green, and Conte, it's Antonio Conte, who was born 2 weeks after me. That's why we're virtually indistinguishable, look exactly the same, and had the same kind of careers as well. But Conte Verde, tempted into thinking I'm having a wee go at Celtic there. I'm not. But the SS Conte Verde sails from Genoa, to over to South America. Its very first voyage was from Genoa to Buenos Aires, and then after that first World Cup, Guillermo Stabil, who's playing for Huracan, he's born in Buenos Aires, he's playing for Huracan in Argentina, he signs for Genoa. So he gets the same boat back. He goes from Buenos Aires to Genoa. That's quite the actual team, Genoa, not even Sampdoria, Genoa. Well, it's naval history. But that ship, the Conte Verde, was built in Dalmuir. Very first international football match ever played is Hamilton Crescent, Partick, cricket ground there, and he's from Parque Patricios. No, Parque Patricios is the area in which Guillermo Stabil was born. I think that's quite a coincidence. No, okay, right, it was built in Dalmuir. The very first international match ever played, banks of the Clyde, if you like, and the very first, the culmination, the highest version of international football is the World Cup finals. So it's like 50 years later before we actually get the World Cup finals played. But it's the ship that goes, it was built in Dalmuir, for a Genovese yard, but it's built in the banks of the Clyde. It's built in, or whatever it is, the Clyde Delta, whatever it is. By the time you get to Dalmuir, it's right on the Clyde anyway. So I think that was quite a coincidence. No, right, okay. Well, Guillermo Stabil, the guy I'm talking about, top scorer for Argentina in that first World Cup, and he plays in it. What was that? We're playing a French team tonight. Like, Jules Rimet. That keeps it quite French. France scored the first goal ever in the World Cup. The first, Lucien Laurent scores the first goal ever in the World Cup finals. That keeps it on theme. But once Guillermo Stabil's had his wee career at Genoa, the last club he plays for, and he becomes player manager for them, is Red Star Paris. Red Star Paris, who play in green and white and were founded by Jules Rimet. Jules Rimet actually founded Red Star Paris. Hardcore Catholic, Jules Rimet. I was right into that's why he founded Red Star Paris, because of some announcement by the Pope or something, some edict that had come out for the Vatican when he was a kid about how exercise was good for you and all that kind of stuff. That's why. So there you go. That's if you think you're a staunch Rangers fan. Well, you're talking about Jules Rimet. You're all interested in Jules Rimet. You've let yourself down. There's a thing on Prime, Amazon Prime. Just now, it's a 2-part documentary. I think split into two, but you've got to pay for 2 different parts. And that's the thing. I'm already paying for Amazon Prime. You will be as well. And then you've got to pay again. It's behind a paywall, a further paywall. This 2-part documentary about David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos. I'm only mentioning it because I'm about to talk about David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, or an anecdote related to him. And I'm going to probably get it wrong. This thing I'm talking about might get mentioned in that you might have paid for. There's lots of free stuff about The Sopranos and about David Chase on Amazon Prime, and I'm starting to kind of try and work my way through that. Maybe it's going to get mentioned in all those programs as well, but I'm not interested enough to go in there and pay more money for it. But if you have, please forgive me if what I'm saying you already know, and it's going to be inaccurate, but the central message will hold true. Because right at the height of Sopranos fever, I was as obsessed with Sopranos as anybody else. The creator, David Chase, was all over your Sunday supplements, your newspapers. He was the darling of kind of entertainments and arts media. And I don't know if this thing I saw was on the South Bank show or Late Review, maybe even on Newsnight, a wee article on Newsnight, a wee feature on Newsnight. But I remember him talking in this interview back, more than 20 years ago, at the start of the Sopranos hysteria, the height of the Sopranos hysteria, about how he'd been a writer. His career had began early days. He'd been on the Rockford Files. He'd been a writer on the Rockford Files. Now, people, if you're my age, kind of, I'm mid-50s, you'll barely remember the Rockford Files, the days of television only having 3 channels. That's my kind of war years thing. I don't want to go back to that, but and I hated the Rockford Files because it wasn't Starsky and Hutch. It wasn't Blake Seven. It wasn't the professionals. There wasn't lots of guns and explosions and futuristic stuff. It was just this old guy, as far as I was concerned back then. James Garner seemed to be about 70 years old, and the programme also featured a guy playing his dad. He was called Rocky. Original nickname. So he seemed about 100 to me. The two of them are probably about 10 years younger than I am now at the time, but it seemed kind of boring. It was a detective thing, but it was kind of cutesy or whatever. He was a likeable guy. There was action scenes, there was car chases, I think there was guns featuring in it, but very rarely. And it was on during the week, and it's one of the things, well, my mum and dad are watching this. If I want to stay up a bit later, I don't know what time it was on, but I'm sure it was on during the week. I was primary school at the time, but I remember I watched the Rockford Files, and it used to annoy me because it dragged me in, because I did actually like it. The writing was pretty good, obviously. I would always end up liking it despite myself. Not when you're a kid, you'd be, no, I don't want to have my dinner, I don't want to have my main course, just going to just have the ice cream, but then you have the main course and you end up really liking it, it's mince and tatties, and you realise you do actually like kind of fatty food, and you spend your whole life getting morbidly obese. Mum, it's your fault. The Rockford Files was the same thing. You think you want something sweeter, you want something more kind of overtly entertaining, more dramatic, but no, it was actually really good in a kind of slow burning sort of way. I can't remember a single plot line or anything, but David Chase talks in this interview. What I remember is him talking about being in the Rockford Files. It was in, obviously there's a writing room. It's that kind of almost like a sweatshop type thing they have in Hollywood or New York, probably whatever it was, they would write the Rockford Files. And there was a team of writers in this kind of writing room, and the guy who was their boss, this much more senior, much older guy, I don't know if he was a producer, I don't know if he was a script editor or something, but he'd have an office just off the writing room, but we'd come in every now and then and say, right guys, how's it going? Because you've got to keep churning the stuff out for these American sitcoms, police procedurals, all these various things, the fictional stuff that they put out episodic every week. You've got to keep hitting the mark. You've got to keep entertaining the audience and to keep the advertisers going and keep the things making money. And he would say, what's happening? Oh, we've developed this plot. And David Chase is saying, we'd tell him about this idea for a love interest perhaps, or developing James Garner Rockford's character. Somebody from his past will turn out, and we've got this idea for maybe there's going to be a bomber who's planting bombs, and he knows when they're going to go off, but he can't find out where they're going to. That's good, but what are the bad guys up to? What are the bad guys up to? And it got to the point where by the time this fella retired, this producer or script editor, I can't remember what the guy was, they got him, the guys in the writing room all chipped in to get him like a nameplate for his desk at home. But instead of getting his name engraved on it, they got engraved on it just the phrase, what are the bad guys up to? Or what are the bad guys doing? That's the thing. Because that's all this guy asked them. He'd just come in and say, yeah, that's good, I love all your ideas, but what are the bad guys doing? And the idea was, and you'll know this if you watch any kind of, like CSI, Miami, or whatever you watch just now, there needs to be peril. There needs to be momentum. There needs to be something that ensures the main characters are staying on point, doing what the programme says they're going to do, which is, chase stuff down, stop stuff happening, catch bad guys. But it also creates that kind of forward-going momentum, that excitement, that underlying immediacy that keeps these things interesting. Whether as an audience member or not, you might think you prefer the little love stories, the stories that are spread throughout the length of a series. Well, they get together. There's usually somebody they're going to, or maybe especially in detective stuff, they're always alcoholics, or their kids hate them, that their ex-wife's giving them a hard time. They've always got really terrible personal lives, so there's lots to develop there along the course of the series. But within each episode, there needs to be little stories, little narratives that need to be resolved, that start and end in that one episode. And that gives the thing pace. That is why you're watching. That, without you knowing it, that is also as much of a reason as why you're watching, as you fancying the characters involved or whatever. And this guy, what are the bad guys doing? What are the bad guys? I think the most basic episodes, I'm talking about this. We're playing Nice in Europe in a few years' time, and all I'm talking about is the Rockford Files. But I think the most, I've never watched the programme actually, the Kiefer Sutherland thing, 24. With the very name of the programme, before the titles have even come up, if you've just looked and thought we're going to watch 24, you already know the guy's got 24 hours to sort out whatever's going on. The clock is already ticking. It's urgent the minute you even contemplate watching this thing. It's 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. What are we going to do tonight? Eventually we'll have something to eat and then we'll watch 24. I watched 24. Oh my God, he's only got 24 hours. Each episode is an hour. You know that there's going to be 24 episodes. Each episode is an hour, and this one day that he has to sort out to stop the nuclear holocaust or whatever it is. So you go into that programme already thinking, oh my God, everything else that happens is. And we like to be excited. Football, one thing we've found out is nobody sits chilled out watching the football with either ecstatic, in your face kind of schadenfreude, yes, or this is at Rangers anyway, this is my personal experience, or we're totally burn the place down, let's, pitchforks to the manager's room, let's oust the current regime, maybe even the board as well. It's all extreme, and I think for us, I sit here because I'm different for you. I'm much more composed than you. I'm a chilled out, mellow kind of guy. I'm really mature. I just sit back and go, "What's the problem?" I'm one of the wanks. I'm not in any way. As the opening of this pod, apart from anything else, demonstrates. But I sometimes just think, Europe. What is the manager's doing well in Europe? I love this. I love that we've had such a great start in this new format of the Europa League. I love that we've only lost one game of 1-2, drawn one a great draw away from home against a European trophy holder. It's a great start to this. Oh, we've got to put out the Champions League, that's bad. But I spent so many years, decades, watching Rangers fail to get any kind of respect, self-respect even, in Europe, in European competition, that I am loving this period we're in since we come back from our lowest ebb in the lower leagues domestically in Scotland, and we'll come back and we're hitting quarterfinals. We're hitting, last 16, usually group stages all the time, virtually. Getting to a final in 2022, only the second final that I really remember Rangers getting to that I really enjoyed in my kind of life. We won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1972. I was 2, coming on 3 at the time. I don't remember a thing about it. So I spent most of my life just wanting to see us get to another European final. So what is the problem here? Why are people getting so uptight, wanting Philippe Clement sacked, when he clearly demonstrates that when it comes down to the real deal, European football, he knows what he's doing. Anybody who can perform in Europe will do it. It didn't work out well for Gio, did it? Gio got us to a final, and he still get punted in pretty short order. And I'm now thinking to myself, is it actually, am I getting it the wrong way around? The fact that he's doing so well in Europe demonstrates why what he's doing in the SPFL Premiership is unacceptable. It feels like the more vocal, maybe the more knee-jerk, but the kind of, the general flavour of the Rangers support is that script editor in the Rockford Files. They're coming into the room and they're saying, yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely that you've got this thing about European football now, but what are the bad guys up to? What are the bad guys doing? The bad guys, most of the time it's Celtic, but really it's anybody else who is getting between Rangers and being top of the SPFL Premiership, being top at the Scottish top flight. What are the bad guys up to? That gives it the immediacy, that gives it the urgency, and that's because probably you're going to your work day in, day out. You're on Twitter these days, whatever, it's just toxic anyway. That's definitely going to attract Celtic fans. If you're a Rangers supporter, you want to put that out there. I just delete and move on. But not in a bad way. Just there's no point. If you support a different type of team, are eventually going to fall out. So it's let's not do that. Let's go on as human beings. Twitter, social media isn't real life. But if you're living that social media world and you get Celtic fans in your face all the time, or you're at your work and really you get Celtic guys that you probably may get on with on a day-to-day basis, but they're hitting you in your face with Celtic being better in the league, and maybe it's just really pissing you off. That's the immediacy, that's the urgency, that's the thing we need to get sorted out first. I don't believe it is. I believe Celtic, for example, this season, I think they drew last night with Bruges. They're still looking okay to at least go through into the playoff round, the Champions League. But I think that there's a good chance Celtic will have a good European season. Maybe they'll end up in the Europa League next season and they could get semi-finals. And I bet you achieving in Europe, especially if we start nicking in front of them in the SPFL Premiership, I bet you achieving Europe will suddenly become the only thing to do. What the best clubs do. Then we remember this from Seville in 2003. That's why I was getting to Seville in 2022. It was so good. We won the treble and that was crap compared to getting to a European final. That's where the real glory is. It's just, I don't buy into it. I don't buy into the fact that Philippe Clement's achievements in Europe are almost becoming an inconvenient truth for a lot of Rangers fans. And it's not achievements in Europe, it's just a kind of competence which might go out the window tonight. It might start flailing tonight, but I think it sums up the general attitude just now. What are the bad guys up to? What are the bad guys doing? There's an immediacy that's not going to be served by tonight's game. We're in a situation tonight where we can go to the Côte d'Azur. We could actually, we're up against it. We should get pumped tonight. But we could get a draw. We could even win tonight. Maybe only the... How many times have we won in France? Before we beat Lyon, obviously that time, beat them 3-0. We drew with PSG. We drew the second time with Auxerre. Third time we played them, but the second time in their place. We lost to Nice. We lost to Saint Etienne the first and the second time we played Saint Etienne as well. There's somebody else. Who else have we played? Marseille. We drew over there at the Champions League. I think the only time we've won in France was that time we beat Lyon. Oh no, Monaco. And Monaco isn't even in France. You know, we have that whole pedantic argument. They're a Ligue 1 side, but strictly speaking, they're not French. They're Monegasque, although there is a separate, albeit amateur, unofficial Monaco national team. We could go and have only our second ever victory on French soil, or our fourth victory against a Ligue 1 side away from home, and it would still be, I don't really care. What is he doing? Never mind the Côte d'Azur. What is he doing on the Côte de Silvery Tay, Tay side on Sunday against St Johnstone at McDermott? It's only if he goes there and wins, and finally we get a second away win domestically, that I will maybe get back on board. That's how this guy's going to save his neck, and it seems wrong to me instinctively, but there you go. I grew up in an era. This is most of the guys watching this, but my age, a bit younger, maybe a bit older. But I grew up. I was 8, coming on 9 when we won the treble in 1978. It's my earliest kind of football memories was 77, 78. And then I was 17, coming on 18 the next time we won the league. And that period, just a general fact of life when you're a kid, that period getting from 8, 9 to 17 years old, and Rangers, following Rangers through that whole period, it was horrific. It was awful. I loved Rangers more and more deeply with each passing season, and I was starting going more and more often. I was going home and away at a time when we were struggling to finish 4th in the league. I was going every week. But it only feels like now that I'm 55, that the period from Souness arriving and us winning the league under Souness for the first time till now is getting to be, it feels about the same length emotionally as going from 8, 9 years old to 17 years old. That run of 9 years without winning the title is the one. It's the thing I grew up with. So Aberdeen, being above us in the league, isn't a shock to my system. It feels like the natural order. That's the natural order being restored as far as I'm concerned. Aberdeen being really strong in the league. So I had that to deal with, and then that segued at the same time, overlapping that was this run which had been ongoing from 1972, before I could even remember, right up to 2008, of us not getting into a European final. I was getting towards my 40s before I saw Rangers in a European final, and it was, we'd get past Christmas in Europe 2 or 3 times in that period. Became really close to going all the way in the big one in 92, 93 when I was in my early 20s. But that was almost freakish, that season. It was really, every decade we'd have a go. We'd get to quarterfinals, European Cup, or beyond. Maybe the semi-finals, technically speaking, 92, 93, but that was it. To get to an actual final, to get to an out-and-out semi-final in 2000, an official semi-final in 2008, I couldn't believe it. This was everything I'd dreamed of. And then we get to the final, and I'm at Manchester, and I knew I could die happy. I'd seen us winning the league. I'd seen us, equaling Celtic's 9 in a row. And I'd seen us getting as close as we'd ever got before to equaling their European Cup win. And here we were, I'd got to see Rangers in a European final. Even though we lost, that's an ambition. I want to see Rangers win a European trophy. I want to see Rangers be champions of Europe. But the main thing for me was seeing us being in the stadium as Rangers walked down that tunnel past a European trophy onto the pitch. I'm obsessed with European club football. And the reason for that is because it's where Rangers should be. It still is for me. That's the big boys' playground. That's where we properly represent ourselves, never mind Scotland, a club of our size. So I find it difficult to think that a lot of Rangers supporters, even if we win this game tonight, will still have the knives out for Philippe Clement. In that sense, I suppose he's a bit off the hook, and if he gets beat tonight, nobody cares either, because it's all about that. But I think if he gets beat tonight, it'll augment the ill feeling towards him, as if he is the problem. I'm not even sure that Philippe Clement, I'm pretty sure that he isn't the problem. But it will just prove in the minds of so many people this guy's a joke. But even if he wins tonight, it's proved nothing. you can only make things worse tonight, is what I'm saying. But personally, I don't feel that's the case. I feel this is a game we need to look at in isolation and need to look at in terms of European pride. And I'm really enjoying what we're doing just now in Europe. It's about to get pretty hard, though, I would imagine. Hi, folks. Yeah, this is your Fat Eck. Rangers are entering the match day 5, the second half, a run of 3 games that they should lose in this new format, 36-team, 1-group format of the Europa League preview pod, coming to you in association with Gersnet. Check out Gersnet, the Sunday night pod, the flagship show. I was on it, so of course it got curtailed, and there was only one other person willing to be on it with me. It's still a good episode, though. I think it's on YouTube, on Gersnet. It's Scott, brilliantly hosted by Scott Bradley, top man on Sunday night there, and it's myself. We were hit still by the effects of Saturday's weather, still ongoing. Ross, who was supposed to be on with us, he was coming up from London. His flight back down got cancelled, so I think he ended up getting a bus or something overnight and stuff. He was in the middle of the motorway or something. We're trying to get him to set up his phone. You know, any kind of commitment, real commitment, he would just have sat on that. You know, National Express coach with his phone on him on Zoom and be the third guy on that pod, but he couldn't quite manage it. But it's me and Scott just discussing the fact that, yeah, everything seems terrible. There was no arguing that Saturday's performance against Dundee United was absolutely awful. The only kind of interest, for me anyway, is in trying to find reasons that Philip Clement shouldn't be sacked. If you're going to go against the main opinion, the kind of overarching opinion, it was the same with Philip Clement's pre-match presser for the Nice game last night. He actually had to tell the press, "You want to ask me about the game against Nice? The reason we're here." You know, it was all, "Are you getting sacked, Philip? You know, can you justify? Can you say there's been any progress in your time at the club? Blah blah blah." I think there's a frenzy being whipped up that just isn't justified at all. We've seen this movie before, and I think that's the problem. We've forgotten that you can actually switch channels. You don't have to watch this movie. It doesn't have to go the same way. I think we're actually getting to the point where we're just so used to losing the manager, be it to Aston Villa, through him being headhunted, or through us sacking him. We're getting so used to losing the manager before Christmas that we feel it has to happen. But the only kind of interest I thought there was in the pod on Saturday, the only way to do it properly was just to tee up all the things that people are complaining about, how poorly Rangers are playing, especially domestically. All the kind of the ways in which it wasn't working against Dundee United, and then try and see why that's not Philip Clement's fault, why things could get better, why the man shouldn't be sacked. So I'm sponsored by Gersnet. Check that out. And I'm also sponsored by Ernest Hemingway, Fiesta, The Sun Also Rises, one of my favourite novels of all time, if not the favourite. I think probably Jane Eyre is more favourite. Bit of an idiot, Ernest Hemingway, an absolute tool of a man, but my God, what a writer. What a writer. And I fell in love with these books. Later, when it began to get dark, I walked around the harbour and out along the promenade and finally back to the hotel for supper. There was a bicycle race on, the Tour de Pays Basque, and the riders were stopping that night in San Sebastian. In the dining room at one side there was a long table of bicycle riders, eating with their trainers and managers. They were all French and Belgians and paid close attention to their meal, but they were having a good time. The trainers and managers, they were all French and Belgians. French and Belgians. The next morning at 5 o'clock, the race resumed with the last lap, San Sebastian to Bilbao. I've been at Hemingway's house, his old house in Oak Park, the Oak Park area of Chicago, where the lawns were wide and the attitudes were narrow. Some minds were small. Lawns were wide and minds were small. He said didn't like where he came from, even though it's a pretty privileged background. I've been there, but I've also been on a bus. I've not been on the bike. I did do cycle, a bit of cycling and what have you, kind of have casual races with folks back in the day when I was a kid, mainly because of Hemingway, as well as my mate Alan, who got me into Hemingway. But I've been on a bus from San Sebastian to Bilbao. I've been on the bus from Bilbao to San Sebastian, and that was in 2007, the summer of 2007, which I probably told you about already. Went on holiday to Bilbao for a week. San Sebastian, Real Sociedad, that's the first team Nice played in Europe this season in this Europa League group stage. They qualified straight for it through the dint of finishing 5th in Liga 1 last season. They drew at home with San Sebastian's Real Sociedad and Bilbao. Athletic Bilbao, they're in this group stage as well. In their stadium, the new San Mamés, it's hosting the final of the Europa League this season. And if you were to carry along from San Sebastian, you get to Bilbao and just carry right on straight along through that neck that the Iberian Peninsula hangs onto, where Spain joins up with France, and then just carry on around. You then be looking at the Med, and you carry on up that, and you'd eventually hit Nice if you carried on up that coast. I was there 2007, and I stayed in the Hotel Zenit. I've told you this before. I know I tell that's just all the same stuff all the time, especially when it comes to the French. It gets me very excited in an anorak way. But I stayed in the Hotel Zenit in Bilbao, not knowing that by 2007, 2008, 10 months later, I would finally get the zenith of my needs for Rangers to be in a European final, and maybe playing Zenit St. Petersburg in the final. And we would, the first game we played just a week or so after I come back from Bilbao was against Zeta of Montenegro. Yeah, so it's the Z to Z of European football. And I did the tour of the old San Mamés. What a stadium! Absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen Athletic Bilbao. I need to see them, a European finalist, two-time European finalist. Need to get them off my list. But San Mamés is a stadium, one of two stadiums I've been in when it's been empty, and you can feel the atmosphere. I've been in certain stadiums. I remember going to see Burnley against Crystal Palace at Turf Moor. I was really excited. Turf Moor looks a fantastic ground. A great history, Burnley. And just it was dead. It was just it was a good crowd in the place. It just really underwhelmed me. I didn't enjoy it at all. Montrose, first time I went to see Montrose, not against Rangers, it has to be said. I'd always been looking forward to going to Lynx Park, and again it was just they built a new stand, and I think it kind of ruined the vibe there. And it was just kind of, this is really underwhelming. They were playing East Stirlingshire, mind you, but the result for that, there has been two stadiums where it had been empty, and you felt the atmosphere. It still hit you as soon as you walk out into them. Been done plenty of stadium tours. Been the Bernabeu and what have you. Did the stadium tour in the new camp as well as seeing Rangers in the new camp, and it's really impressive. You go and go, oh, I can imagine what it's like when it's full. I can imagine what this is like when it's full. This is great. But two grounds I went into just for the stadium tour. I've never seen a game there, and I'll never see a game at the original San Mamés. It was Athletic Bilbao, the old San Mamés. It was just, you could feel it bouncing off the walls. It was like 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning or something, and it was just immense. And the other one is the Parc des Princes in Paris, where Rangers have played a few times in Europe, as it turns out. And that's where the very first European Cup final was held, and it was refereed by Arthur Ellis. It was Real Madrid beating Stade de Reims of France. And the following season, Rangers played OGC Nice, who had beaten Stade de Reims to the title the previous season. They played them in our very first European match, the first European match Rangers ever played. And this is Fiesta, Sun Also Rises. Hemingway wrote this. It's in a Roman Aleph. It's based on stuff he experienced at the San Ferman Bullfighting Festival in Pamplona in 1924, I'm sure. And he writes it from 1924. And it comes out, I think it's published in 1920. No, it's the following year, it's 1925, summer of 25, and he writes it in that autumn and then edits it in March 1926, and it comes out in October 1926. So it's just basically 98, 99 years ago. This corresponded with this season that Hemingway does Fiesta Sun Also Rises, and it's just 30 years after that Rangers are playing against OGC Nice, the Olympic Gymnast Club of Nice, in the European Cup. They come to Ibrox in the first game. There's like 65,000 there. The first European tie. And we played teams on exhibition games and friendlies and what have you. European stuff. Rangers had done European tours, been in the States as well, obviously, in Canada. But this was our first game in European competitions. We currently know there's 65,000 there at Ibrox. A guy called Jacques Favre. He scores after 23, 24 minutes, I think it is, for OGC Nice. So OGC Nice have scored the first goal ever. He's a French international. He's either an outside left or a striker. I've seen various reports, but he played a couple of games for France. But this guy, Jacques Favre, Faivre is his surname. He's the first man ever to score in a European tie, featuring Rangers, and at Ibrox in a European tie. Max Murray, by 40 minutes, becomes the first Rangers player to score in Europe when he hits equaliser. Billy Simpson, the legendary Billy Simpson, gets one in the second half. But there's a kind of culture clash. The whole thing European football's about. There's a bit of a culture clash. The French think we're being too physical, too robust, kind of bull-headed British types, whereas they're hitting the deck and diving and also putting in elbows and stray punches and things like that in retaliation, and we think they're being really cheaty and foreign and basically a bit fey. But there's Spaniards and Argentinians and all that in this team. You should read. I'm getting a wee recap on this from a wee reread of Ian Duff, another legend of Gersnet. Ian Duff's book, Follow On. He brought this out for the Rangers' 50 years in European competition, but it's a great section on that very first tie. And Eric Caldo. My name is Alec Anderson. La mer, qu'on voit danser le long des golfes clairs, à des reflets d'argent. La mer, des reflets changeants. Sur la pluie. I am not reading that. I know French off the top of my head. I know that song off the top of my head. There's no way I wrote that down just to remember. But you'll know the Charles Trenet. That's the 1940s. He wrote that in 1945, just at the end of the Second World War. Charles Trenet, the composer, lyricist, a famous chanson, classic French tune. And you probably know the Bobby Darin version. I certainly know the Bobby Darin version. We're talking about Sopranos there, that whole Italian-American New York area gangsterism. Early 90s, Scorsese brings out Goodfellas, and the Bobby Darin version, somewhere beyond the sea. Oh, I'm a great singer. That's on the soundtrack, and I play that to death as I'm driving up and down the Côte de Clyde. And I knew about that version. Then there's so many adverts, and probably the kind of Charles Trenet version, the French version, the original version. And then the last film I saw at the cinema for 10 years, Thomas Alfredson's version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, it ends with a version of La Mer, and I thought it was this kind of husky-throated, husky-voiced French chanteuse, because it's the French version, it's La Mer, not Beyond the Sea, or whatever it's called, the Americanized version. It turned out it's actually Julio Iglesias. It was my wife said to me, "Have you heard the Julio Iglesias version of La Mer?" I said, No, And then we're sitting watching. I've watched Tinker Tailor a few times. I made her sit and watch it again on telly quite recently. She goes, "That's that Julio Iglesias." "No, that's a woman singing." "No, that's Julio Iglesias." I looked up. His voice is really high. Julio Iglesias, bit of a dude, what have you. But so there you have this song, and it's the end of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which is kind of set in the 70s. As Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is written by John le Carre, he's an English guy with a French name. And it's about the Russians versus the Britons and how we're getting on with the CIA in America. And Jim Prideaux is one of the main characters. A whole lot of nominative determinism going on and off screen with that production. Mark Strong is playing Jim Prideaux, who goes to Budapest and gets shot in Budapest and taken to Moscow, and then back in London it's going off. And this is at the end. It's the closing sequence. It's a closing montage of Thomas Alfredson, a Swede, directing this film with Gary Oldman, an English actor who's famous in Hollywood. And they're all dealing with the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain, the name of the famous Rangers team of the 40s, into the 50s. Eric Caldo played for Bill Struth, and he played the tail end of the Iron Curtain team, and then he just left just before Rangers won the treble 63-64 under Scott Simon. So he links both those great Rangers sides. And we, the Iron Curtain team, so called because of what was happening in the 40s throughout Europe, but also because our defence was absolutely solid. La Costilla Metallica was what they called the Uruguay team of the 30s, who won that World Cup. They had a great defence as well. They won the Olympics in the 20s before that. And I'm taking this too far. It's European nights. I get quite excited about them. But so we have this thing. It's all about the Cold War, which is about the Iron Curtain, Tinker Tailor, and us, the spying and the Cambridge spies and what have you. And so Julio Iglesias singing in French, this Spaniard whose dad's Galician and he's born in Madrid, and I think he's part Jewish as well. And it's just a whole lot of kind of war-related stuff, post-war stuff, and a whole lot of it's very polyglot, different languages, different nationalities of it, and it's basically what happens with Rangers playing OGC Nice in that first ever Europe. We're just hit by so much foreignness, so much sophistication, so much cosmopolitan stuff. We're the ones, we're the Iron Curtain team, and what have you. It's kind of overwhelming. We get put out eventually by the Nice had played Aarhus in the previous round, a preliminary round. We got a bye from that. They played Aarhus of Denmark, and they scalped them before they played us. But we end up the game at Ibrox. Arthur Ellis, the famous English referee who had refereed the first, been given the honour of refereeing the first European Cup final the previous season, a season in which Hibs played in Europe. Hibs are Britain's first representatives in the European Cup, now the Champions League kids, and that's Hibs who played a couple of nights ago against Aberdeen at Easter Road. Easter Road, the first stadium ever to host European Cup football in Britain, before Old Trafford, before Anfield even, never mind Parkhead and Ibrox. And they end up getting put out by Stade de Reims in the semi-final. It should have been Aberdeen. Aberdeen had won the league, the Scottish League, in 1955. Aberdeen should have been our first representatives, and Aberdeen become the third Scottish club to win a European trophy in 1983. And there they were the other night fighting out this great 3-each draw with Hibs, which again benefits us domestically, benefits Philippe Clement. Aberdeen starting to slip up a bit. They've dropped 5 points at the last 6. We've only dropped 2 at the last 3. So it's all historical. It's all pretty. It's all kind of intermingled. It's all intertwined. Because the European Cup was the early days, the British teams are a bit unsure about it, as always. We're slow to get involved in the World Cup. We're slow to get involved in the European Championships, because we felt we were an island nation with an island attitude. We were the best in the world when it came to football, and we didn't know that these foreign types in different continents were, and that the continent closest to us were getting better and better all the time, and we needed to get involved in that, but we didn't. Chelsea didn't take part in the first European Cup. No English representatives in the first European Cup. But here we were in the second European Cup. Rangers are in there. And the famous Arthur Ellis blows for full time 5 minutes too early. And when he realises this, he has to get the players back out the tunnel. But Eric Caldo famously was best man at his brother's wedding in Cumnock, I'm assuming the next day. So he was in the bath. He's already in the bath. He's already get his gear off and he's getting himself washed down. And he has to get back out the bath, dry off, and get back into his kit and get back on the park and finish the last 5 minutes of the game. It's chaos. It's post-war. It's just, it's foreign. It's different. It's exciting. It's not something you can properly control. And now I'm watching Rangers in a situation where Europe's the one thing we can control, and that somehow is no good enough. We go over for the second leg against Nice early November 1956, and we get there, and it gets round the Stade du Ré. It's where they played at that point in time. Nice, and it's Rangers, and it's Stade du Ré, and it's rain, and the game gets cancelled. We have to go back to Glasgow, come back 2 weeks later, fly back 2 weeks later, middle of November. We take the lead. Johnny Hubbard, the penalty king, or South African penalty king, he scores a penalty about 40 minutes, and that's Rangers 3-1 up on the tie, and then right in the stroke of half-time we score again, and the Italian referee, I'm not saying anything, but the Italian referee, in the early stages of European football, he rules it out. He's saying he's already blown the half-time whistle. Clive Thomas, Brazil against Sweden 1978, anybody who's interested, anybody who remembers that. And it's a bit dodgy, but the French come out second half and they score 2 goals in quick order. Billy Logie, a young player for Rangers, gets sent off for hacking somebody, but at the same time he receives a punch in the face from one of the Nice players. The referee sends off both guys, and the crowd try to get on the park as well. This idea it's just British fans that are hooligans, put out the window straight away. Rangers' first experience of a European away game, they're on the park trying to get the referee and all that in the game. It goes to there's no extra time or penalties in those days. The tie's completely level. It goes to a playoff in Paris in the Parc des Princes. So that's Rangers. We're trying to get to Bilbao this season. We're trying to get to San Mamés for the final this season. The new version of the one stadium have been an amazing atmosphere even when it's empty. And here we were, our first ever European tie was concluded at the Parc des Princes in Paris, where we'd be back to beat Paris Saint-Germain many a decade later on penalties, in the days where you didn't get playoffs when ties finished level after 2 games. But here we are, back in Paris, back in the Parc des Princes, and it's kind of, we're up against it from the. We lose 3-1, even our goal as an own goal by a Nice player. But at the end, Bobby Shearer knocks a guy out by kicking him onto the track so forcibly that the guy, I think he hits an advertising hoarding, so I don't know what happened, but the guy's out cold. He's unconscious. There's a wee mini riot. The players are having a bit of a barney. Again, some fans, not a great crowd at the game, but they're trying to get on the park. That track, famous track that starts with the Tour de France used to start and then end before they redeveloped the Parc des Princes in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. Aye, great stuff. But by the end of the night, they all go back to a hotel in Paris, and all the players are getting on great. Rangers congratulate Nice, and the Nice players are happy to toast them, and they all have a great meal together, the way it should be. And the following season we play Saint Etienne, and we beat them in Europe. So our first two teams we played against in Europe are French, and here we are. What are we going to say about Nice? Okay, what are we going to say about Nice? They are 120 years old. They don't have much of a European history. I think they got to the quarterfinals the time we played them. They get put out by Real Madrid. The quarterfinals of that European Cup. I think they get put out again in the 50-60, maybe in 59-60 season. They get put out by Real Madrid in the quarterfinals. Because the only time Nice won the league, they won the league 4 times, they won Ligue 1, beat Champions of France 4 times, fantastic achievement, but it's only in the 50s. The kind of Hibs type scenario, maybe. Kind of French Hibs, if you like. I don't know. It's not even that, probably. There's no direct comparison, really. Maybe more like a Kilmarnock, who they played and they beat in the 97-98 Cup Winners' Cup, because the last time Nice won anything was in 1997 Coupe de France. That was the third French Cup. I think the other two came in the 50s, along with those 4 league titles that they've won. That was their heyday. They finished 5th in Ligue 1 last season, just above Lyon in 6th. So the two of them qualified automatically for the Europa League, and this is us playing the two of them this season in the Europa League group stages. They qualified automatically for the group stages because of the massive coefficient that France has got. And the two of them are currently sitting 5th and 6th in Ligue 1 just now. And it's the same teams. You take out Brest from last season and replace them with Marseille, then it's Paris Saint-Germain are away in front. Paris Saint-Germain are 12 points in front of them. 11 points is fine, but 12 points at this stage of the season, that's embarrassing. So Paris Saint-Germain are running away with Ligue 1 again, as they did last season. And I think, it's, who else is it? Lille and Monaco still up there. And Nice are playing Lyon in Lyon this coming Sunday. And the question for me is, I think Nice also got to the quarterfinals of the Conference League season before last. They weren't even in Europe last season, but they're very sporadically in European football. It's just coming from a league of the depth of quality that you have. You just look up the French stadiums. Never mind looking up what teams have won what. Just look up with the French stadiums. It's unbelievable. When they host the Euros a couple of times, they've hosted the Euros 3 times, hosted a couple of World Cups. No wonder it's a phenomenal country when it comes to football. Amazing infrastructure. Yet they can't win European trophies. They cannot win European trophies at all. Marseille, only French side to win the Champions League, the very first Champions League, immediately. They weren't stripped of title, they just weren't allowed to defend it because of all the dodginess that went on around that. Paris Saint-Germain won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1996, 96, 94 Arsenal, 95 Real Zaragoza beat Arsenal in the Parc des Princes in the following season. Paris Saint-Germain won this thing. They lost the final in 97 to Barcelona in Rotterdam. So, you've got, Bastia of Corsica. We're talking about Napoleon on Saturday there. Not Napoleon, maybe he had a kind of effect down the line, but they reached and lost the 1978 UEFA Cup final. A famous Saint Etienne side that beat Rangers along the way. We beat them in the first time we played them in Europe. The second time we played them in Europe, 75-76, the final was at Hampden, and Saint Etienne beat us on the way to that European Cup. The greatest Saint Etienne side of all time. Wearing the sexiest kit, and it's green. It's green, but it's got red, white and blue trim, and it's the black shorts, not their usual shorts, the black shorts they wore against Bayern in that final in Hampden. Arguably the most glamorous kit ever to appear in the final of the European Cup of the Champions League, Allez Vert, but they couldn't win the thing. They're bemoaning the square posts at Hampden. Lyon, massive club, never reached a European final. Marseille, lost a few. They lost 1999 UEFA Cup final, the 2004 UEFA Cup final. They lost that to Valencia and Gothenburg. They lost the 1991 European Cup final. They lost the 2018 Europa League final. They lost to Atletico Madrid in Lyon Stadium. There is other examples. Stade de Reims losing 2 of the first 4 European Cup finals. Who else? There's other. PSG, Lyon. Rangers have played 9 different French clubs. There's 18 teams in Ligue 1. It's an 18-team league, the French top flight, and we've played half of those sides. We've met them in Europe. Monaco. We beat them. We always beat Monaco in Monaco the 2 times we've played them. Gio scoring the goal over there. Maybe that time we played them in the Champions League. And they lost the 2004 Champions League final, and they lost the 1992 European Cup Winners' Cup final to Werder Bremen in the Old Estadio da Luz in Lisbon. So the French, they've been plenty of teams in the finals of the European Cup, but they just cannot win. The thing that they're very poor at winning European trophies. Bordeaux, they've collapsed financially. They've headed down the divisions. Sympathy with Bordeaux. Been there. I went down to Anfield to see them about 2016 in the Europa League against Klopp's Liverpool, just to get them off the list. Bordeaux, Girondins de Bordeaux. They reached, was it 1996 UEFA Cup final? So they have this thing, the French, they sort themselves out international level, and it's amazing, their top 5 league because of the money they've got, but it kind of exposes the hypocrisy of UEFA. The French have just not what, look, I think we, in Scotland, Rangers, Celtic, Aberdeen have all won a European trophy. I think we're level, at least with the French, in terms of winning European trophies. I'm trying to think. PSG, Marseille, there is somebody else. I'm sure there's somebody else that's probably won a European trophy for France, but it's not many. If that, I don't know off the top of my head, but they've got 37,000. In fact, just over 36,000. The capacity of it's Allianz Riviera is their stadium. They brought that in. So the old Stade de Reims, it was quite a basic stadium, but they brought this place in. It's like 3 tiers, but it's less than 37,000. And it's one of those stadiums that Scotland will never have. This is what places like France, they have this in England. We could almost borrow these stadiums for our League Cup semi-finals. If the old firm aren't involved, have these stadiums we could just send, even for a replay or something like that, when the crowd interest isn't quite there. We end up in Scotland having, Hampden that is a third full, or we have Tynecastle or Easter Road with capacities of 20,000 that are totally oversubscribed. If you're going to have a semi-final there, they have these stadiums in France. It's just ideal capacity that we don't have in Scotland. It's either Rangers and Celtic, so we've got Hampden, Ibrox, Parkhead, all over 50,000, all seated, or it's Tynecastle, Easter Road, we have a 20,000 capacity. We have got nothing at this capacity, this in between. But this in betweenness sums up the puzzle for me, the thing that gives me hope about Nice. We're in a situation where there's 3 Scottish teams, and we're actually doing quite well this season. If you can be neutral, pretend to be neutral for a second. We've got Celtic doing okay in the Champions League. We've got Rangers doing okay in the Europa League. We've got Hearts doing okay in the Conference League. That's great for Scotland. That's absolutely fantastic. Both Rangers and Celtic have drawn away with European trophy holders this season, Atalanta and Olympiacos. That's representing, that's good stuff. Hearts doing us proud in the Conference League as well. But in France, Lyon and Nice are looking at this going, well, there's 4 of their domestic rivals are in the Champions League alone. Lille, Monaco, Brest, PSG are all in the Champions League group this season. So I think there's a kind of attitude, perhaps. I know Lyon came to Ibrox and they stuffed us quite easily. They always do, mind you. I think the French, I think the Big 5 leagues maybe look at the Europa League as a kind of almost a League Cup. The way that some Arsenal or Man City regard the League Cup, which they tend to win still by accident almost, but you're putting it reserve sides or whatever. I don't know how focused they are on this. They come in at the group stage this season. They qualified automatically at the group stage. They drew their first game at home with Real Sociedad. They missed a penalty late on in that game, didn't he? But it was a healthy crowd, but you can see lots of spaces at a stadium that's already down to kind of 36,000 capacity. That's what it's starting at. And then their other home game was against 20. Sam Lammers scores. He's softening up our opponents, also scoring at Old Trafford. He's softening up our Europa League group stage opponents this season for us. Sam doing us a favour. But he put them 2-0 up, 20. And then I think at 2-1 they pulled a goal back, scored a cracking goal. They do score nice goals, Nice, from out, and there's Nice, nice. It's an eye rhyme. The Nice, the prog rock group, Mr. Nice, the biography about a lovely druggy guy, the biscuit Nice. He just the idea, the scope for puns is off the scale when it comes to Nice and Nice, but they do score nice goals. They do, Nice. When they do actually score, they've gone behind in all 4 games that they've played in the Europa League group stage this season, and they scored a cracker from outside the box, curled it into the far corner to pull a goal back in that game. But they then go down to 10 men. They get a man sent off, and then come back to 2 each, and then eventually 20 get a man sent off as well. So there'll be a suspension tonight. I don't know who it was that was sent off for Nice. That's against AZ. They go to Lazio. They get beat 4-1 in Rome. Lazio, I think, are winning the Europa League group just now, but they lose 4-1 to Lazio in Rome, and they get beat 1-0 off Ferencvaros in Budapest. It's all different goals that are conceding, so you can't see there's any particular weakness, but they seem to have a kind of back post coming in from an angle thing about most of the goals they've conceded so far in this group stage. I've seen the highlights on television, but they had a man sent off against Ferencvaros as well, so they lose 1-0, but it could have been worse. They're down to 10 men. So they're of a level, Nice, and it feels like they could just play in Ligue 1. If they go to Ligue 1 style, they could stuff us, I think. Tonight they should give us a do, and I was looking at this group stage saying we'll get 2 Ligue 1 sides, we'll get 2 English Premier League sides, and we've already been stuffed by the first Ligue 1 side. I thought these are games we're going to lose, and it's what we can get from the other 4 games. So we might be waiting until we play Union Saint-Gilloise in the last game in January of this group stage before we confirm that we're going to even be in the playoff round, never mind any ambitions we have to go through automatically to the last 16. We would need to be winning tonight. I don't know how much that is on, but as I say, I think when it comes to your top 5 clubs, the top 5 leagues, England, Germany, Italy, and the French tonight in particular, I think they maybe look at the domestic situation. They think, I don't know the Spanish as well. I don't really care about anything other than our own league and the Champions League, our own top flight in the Champions League. And you see, I remember we played Porto, it was like nearly 20 years ago. We played Porto and Do Dragao in the Champions League, and I was over there for that game. And there was a few Bolton Wanderers fans dotting about because they were playing, I think, was it Vitória Guimarães or something like that, and they were playing a nearby Portuguese side, and they're basing themselves in Porto, some of their fans, before going along. And they didn't. I think Bolton put out the reserve team that night because they were more concentrated in staying. They were in the Premier League at that time, and staying in the top flight. That's Bolton, a side famously, like West Ham. I've never won the top flight. Probably the side that's finished second, them in West Ham. I finished second most often, or being in the top flight the longest without ever winning the top flight. In England, great FA Cup sides, and here they were in Europe. I think it was their first adventure in European football, and they were putting the reserve team out against Vitória Guimarães or whoever it was. Were playing, not really trying, because they're concentrating on the league. And I think that's an attitude that's shared by a lot of aside from the top 5 leagues in Europe, top 5 domestic leagues. Unless it's the Champions League, it's a hindrance. So we should maybe try and benefit from this. We should, because it's Europe is where it's at for me as far as I'm concerned. There's a very small crowd they had in that game against 20, and I think this is on. They've got a manager, Frank Heiss, in his early 50s. He did well at Lorient, kind of worked his way through that Lorient B team, Lorient caretaker manager, assistant manager, then eventually takes over. And then he's done the same thing at Lens. I think I was at Lens that he became the caretaker, then the assistant, then he took over. He was at the B team there, then it gets in the first team, and now here he is at Nice. They've obviously got more money than other Ligue 1 sides have, Nice, and it's a great one down the Côte d'Azur there. It's a lovely part of the world to be staying in. But I think sometimes it's if people have got better things to do with their time down there than go and watch the football. Crowds aren't great, but I think it's doable. I think if they're not on it, if they're actually concentrating on getting into those Champions League places, they want to go above Lyon. They're going to play Lyon. They are above. They just nicked above Lyon by beating Strasbourg in a comeback win at home on Sunday there. So they're in 5th place just now, but they want to stretch away from Lyon. They want to be getting into those top 4 spots to get an automatic Champions League spot or get a chance at qualifying for the Champions League next season. Nice will be concentrating, I think, on Lyon at the weekend. There's already a lot of talk of them having injuries. You always take that with a pinch of salt when it comes to. I think one of their injuries is actually their manager who had to go to hospital with headaches, really bad migraines. So hope he's okay, but I hope maybe that's also affected his planning for this game in a negative way. they've got probably on their payroll. They've got Tanguy and Ndombele, formerly of Spurs, French international, who in midfield, and he played for Napoli and scored against us at Ibrox. Seen him scoring live. He scored against Ibrox in the Champions League a couple of seasons ago. Pablo Rosario from the Netherlands, he's a midfielder. He scored a cracking goal for them in this group stage this season. Dutch fella, I think he's been captain as well, stand-in captain at certain points. Was it him that gets sent? It might have been him that gets sent off in Budapest. Maybe the most famous player they've got is Dante, the centre back. And I'm thinking, Dante, is that the guy? That's a guy. That's quite a distinctive name, obviously, who played for Bayern and München and Gladbach. And I thought that this will be him. This is the end of his career. I just thought of him as winding down in France. I just looked at this the other night because we're playing Nice. He played I think he's lucky. He played about 100 games for München Gladbach, about 100 games, 150 games for Bayern Munich. Won everything at Bayern Munich, including the Champions League. But he's played 250 league games for Nice. He's 41. He did, to me, it was in his kind of early 30s, maybe 33 years old, 34 years old. He's arrived at Nice as a player. And I've obviously clocked that and thought, that's him just getting one last payday. He's been there for 8 years now. He's 41 years old. He's the captain. He's not played for Brazil for 10 years, Dante. But there he is. He's still playing. But apparently he's an injury worry for tonight. So I don't know. Is it doable? I don't know. The madness of it all has been discussed in the Rangers Review and other far better, far more concise podcasts than this one. Is that the team we started with on Saturday, and it failed so badly, that appalling first half against Dundee United, is the team we started with in Piraeus against Olympiacos in our last outing and got that fantastic result, which could have been better if we'd put away a few more the chances we created in the last game. So I would kind of go with that again tonight, which means Tav still staying. It looks like Tav's been phased out. It's in full flow, the phasing out of Tav. I think it could have come on Saturday against Dundee United, a game in which we were just basically playing with two centre-halves and Raskan just sitting at the halfway line. That was our only defence. I mean, Dujon Sterling could not have been. He was more. The fullbacks were so dangerously, they're more dangerously, worryingly high than your cross-dressing uncle's miniskirt. Dujon Sterling was practically in the front row of the Coltman Road stand on Saturday. That was his basic position. So in a game where we needed to have accuracy, we needed to have a bit of skill to break down that United defence the way it was bedding in the second half. And as the manager himself said, they were getting more tired in the second half than United. Tav could have come on in that game and provided some of his crossing expertise, some of his shooting expertise. He could have played then, but I don't see him starting tonight. The manager will have Nice sussed, obviously. We'll have them studied, but I don't see that. I don't see that happening tonight. Tav start. I think it's going to be Dujon Sterling. Proper. I think proper. Obviously suited to European games, and the manager stuck with him on Saturday, despite him, possibly being as culpable for United's goal as anybody else, if not more than anybody else. I think the manager will probably stick with him, although Leon Balogun is a very, very able deputy waiting in the wings. We've got a bit of a centre-half shortage with Cass and Virgil being out. Maybe we're going to recall Ben Davies. Who knows how desperate things are going to get. But I would be happy with either Balogun or Proper tonight. Because I'd imagine Nice are going to play a fairly European-style game, what with them being European and all that. The question, I'm going for Conor Barron and Nico Raskin. There's no reason to change them at all, that winning midfield sitting pair. The question comes when you get to number 10. It's going to have to be Dessers starting because Danilo and Hadji, who upped the ante for us, who upped the pace and got things going in the second half against United, they're not in the European squad. But Yilmaz has come back. Yilmaz come on for, half an hour on Saturday. I don't know if that's enough. And the manager's very protective of people coming back from injuries. As we know, he staggers their return. If we played Yilmaz tonight, that would let us put Hefty wide left, and it would let us, the mythical move. We saw it against St Johnstone on a Sunday night. We'll get St Johnstone coming up on a Sunday lunchtime this weekend. But moving Nadeem Bajrami into the 10 could happen if we could have Hefty playing outside left. Who knows? I don't know about that. Hefty come on in Poland in the second half against Dynamo Kiev in that Champions League qualifier, which we ultimately lost out on. But he started the kind of comeback in that game We ended up equalising late on in that game, and it was deservedly so. But he's putting a lot of accurate balls. But I think he's putting them in. If I remember it rightly, he's putting them in from deep, almost from a kind of standing position. And the problem is he doesn't seem to be very good at playing at pace, at putting crosses in at pace. He's got great pace. He gets us forward with the ball. He gets us forward positions hefty from left back. But I don't know if his accuracy, maybe he will be more accurate if he's playing outside left. But that's an option for us. It's got to be Czerny in the right hand side. It's going to be Dessers up front. Maybe Igaman's going to come on and play a role tonight. He was getting in a kind of more wide left position when he came on as a sub on Saturday for Bajrami. There could be a bit of playing about with it, but I'm quite happy to see us going with the same starting 11 we had in Piraeus, because it did so well. And I just hope. There's been... Look, we've got to talk about we've got a new CEO. It's official. We do have a new CEO. The man has so much experience. 18 years at Manchester United. For all we love Rangers, for all we think Rangers are the greatest team in the world. Manchester United, gigantic. In the words of Kim Deal and Black Francis, it's a big, big love. Anybody who lasts 18 years in executive positions at Manchester United, never mind getting to be interim CEO as he was, you can be sure that he's arriving with far more relevant experience than... I've forgotten his name. That's how quickly I move on than James Bisgrove left with. So I think it's a fantastic appointment. Looking at it on paper, and anybody can embellish their CV, but he knows law. He's from Aberdeen, so we'll put that to one side. The guy Patrick Stewart. We're not going to. I mean, he's Patrick Stewart. That's the same name as the guy that plays at Picard, officer, Captain Picard, or whatever in the Star Trek movies. I'm not. I remember I watched Star Trek when it was on telly in the 70s, no, the 60s version. Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. I'm not going to. We're beyond that. I'm trying to be sophisticated. We get Kozlovsky, cinema postcards behind us. We've got La Vie en Rose, because the French are a great sporting nation. Raging Bull was on the other night. Marcel Chardin. That's how Jake LaMotta gets the title fight against Marcel Chardin. And then if you've seen the film La Vie en Rose, about Edith Piaf, the scene where she realises Chardin is dead when he's died in that year. It's unbelievable. It's great cinema. It was really, really emotional. Very, very good. Very emotive, obviously, very hysterical, but done in particular. It's two really, really emotional scenes in cinematic history that really affected me. When LaMotta wins the world title finally in Raging Bull, and when Edith Piaf finds out that the love of her life, Marcel Chardin, has been killed. Both involving a French boxer, both involving the same guy, Marcel Chardin. Anyway, what am I talking about? I'm classy. You can tell that French movies and that kind of stuff, and French stuff going on behind me, and fluent French at the beginning of this podcast. I'm not going to lower myself to doing cheap puns about Star Trek, but we have got this new guy, Patrick Stewart, and I just hope that his enterprise, this enterprise will help Rangers live long and prosper, and we can move on to the final frontier, retaining the league title and doing well in Europe. And anybody who's involved in looking after Manchester United's, I don't know the technical terms, I'm not a businessman, obviously, look at the state of me. They're offering the shareholding, the shares as a business on the New York Stock Exchange. That guy's he's got to know what he's doing, and he's going to have some serious contacts. He's been involved. He started off in law. He studied law at Glasgow Uni so he can handle his drink. He's ended up at the agency that looked after the marketing for UEFA club competitions, which is what this is all about. UEFA club competitions for 30 years now have been all about, they are marketing exercises. That's all they are. So they're all about making money from as much TV ad revenue as possible. So yeah, anybody who's been allowed the keys to that operation knows what they're doing, is trusted to make money and to make friends and to influence people. He's involved with the European Club Association, which basically runs UEFA. That's the bully boys, the people who just want to be given any kind of excuse. Give us some sort of special dispensation. Give us a made-up on-the-spot individual coefficient that we can use. I mean, Manchester United, we might end up finishing 10th in the league. you're going to have to invent something, UEFA, to make sure we get into the Champions League still the following season. Something about teams beginning with M and having the final name United, who have won the European Cup before, are guaranteed a spot. That's the new coefficient for the following season if we finish in the league. Because if you don't, we'll just create a European Super League without you. So the European Club Association, they run UEFA, they bully UEFA. The money men of UEFA are totally in their back pocket. So he knows about European football. He's been involved with all sorts of legal stuff at Man United, involved with player negotiation, contract negotiations. This guy knows what he's doing. The morality of it, why pamper life's complexities when the leather runs smooth in the passenger seat. And the reason the leather's running so smooth in the passenger seat of the boardroom at Rangers is because there's so many fat asses coming in and then moving away again. We just keep sacking folk, or we keep losing folk. We keep inventing new positions on the board, and then they don't get filled, they get vacated straight away. So the leather is running particularly smooth. It's getting a lot of rubbing because of all these asses coming and going on it. We need to get somebody in there. The problem I have is with the next proposed appointment. It's rumoured that Malcolm Lord Offord of Tory Wank is going to be becoming our chairman. That's probably as close as I can get to my nightmare scenario of Rangers get taken over by Saudi Arabia. We get that Saudi Arabian investment, and suddenly all the boys that are up, we go to look, Sharia law, these Muslims in the streets of Britain, the guys that did in the Tommy Robinson angle, no realising they're actually listening to a hate preacher while imagining other hate preachers. We don't want to stop the small boats, but somehow, if you want to stop Saudi Arabia, Muslim country that beheads folk, state-controlled actual oppression of people, if you want to stop them coming into British football, that makes you woke as well. I don't know how it works, but I have a big problem if there's any chance if Rangers were to get taken over by Qatari or UAE or Saudi Arabian money. This is probably as close as we can get to that happening. I'm going to park it. And I don't want to get into political stuff. Hopefully, you're so far into this pod, you've switched off already. There's too much to say at Rangers. There's too much to have. I'm going to have to break these pods up. The preview pods are going to have to get broken up. I'll have one where I actually feature on the game in hand, and another one where I deal with the Rangers news that's happened in the last 3 days. Because 3 days is all it takes for it to just go off the scale at Ibrox and the stuff you have to discuss in a podcast. But this is a personal thing. I don't want to do the politics stuff, guys, but it's no strictly speaking a Rangers podcast. It is all I talk about is Rangers, but this is my own personal podcast. It's a bit of a diary of my life. It's mostly a life that's experienced through Rangers, but personally, politically, I'm probably old Labour, whatever. Walter Smith had trouble with the referees strike in 2011. The prospect of having to break a strike. There's an article in the Herald, I remember back 2011, he was just saying, I'm a union guy. I was my whole life. He trained with the SSEB, he did his apprenticeship, and then he worked with electricians in Dundee when he moved to Dundee United as a young man. Walter Smith, he got his apprenticeship. This idea that Rangers is a simmering hotbed of conservatism with a capital C is bullshit, and always has been. I know Thatcher, the tour of Ibrox from Souness and what have you, but that was just, people got a bit carried away in the yuppie days, didn't they? It's just ordinary people who need that kind of help. Need to stick together. Being a monarchist doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a politically a conservative. It's different things we're dealing with there. But I'm really uncomfortable. This guy he's got some sort of honour I've never heard of because of he's a what do you call it? He's a fundee, or a trustee of the Duke of Edinburgh Award, so that's fine. He's done his charity work, they always have though, haven't they? And he was against the breakup of Better Together. He's against the breakup of the UK in 2014. That's fine, I agreed with that as well. But I think we agreed with it for different reasons. I'd imagine he'd be a Brexiteer, I don't know that for sure. I certainly wasn't. And it's just that he's been Under Secretary for Scotland, Under Secretary for, was it Business or Export or something like that, for Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. This part of this, I mean, I might not vote Conservative, but there's plenty of Conservative people, plenty of Tory voters and Rangers fans that I love, I got on great with, and there's plenty of Labour people I can't bloody stand, but that's, you put these things to the side. I'm no anti-Israel, I'm no some sort of, I don't tick all the boxes. I think this idea of putting everybody into boxes is just, it doesn't work. There's no everybody in the right wants everybody in the left to be a certain way, a certain kind of extreme way that they can then castigate them and not have to worry about them. And I do the same thing with people in the right, and it doesn't work like that. People are people, and we all get on. We've all experienced racism in our own families and stuff like that with people that we love forever, we would die for. So we know it's not a straightforward thing. But in terms of simple, but as a representative and somebody coming to the club, I don't like Malcolm Offord. Let's just put it. That's the politest way I can put it. That last Tory government was just a kleptocracy. They were kleptos. They're just totally not a moral amongst them. I was against the breakup of the UK, but his way of trying to ensure that the UK stayed together was setting up a kind of bogus grassroots organisation that started campaigning, saying that if we left the UK, children, sick Scottish children, wouldn't be able to go to Great Ormond Street Hospital. Which Great Ormond Street Hospital said was untrue, and they should take that. This is on his Wikipedia page, and that's the lowest of the low. That's disgusting. My wee cousin had leukemia. He was in York Hill, when he was like a toddler. The idea of taking advantage of these kids, exploiting their situation for political gain is just utterly horrific. So he's a merchant banker, hedge fund manager. To me, these guys are borderline sociopathic, but it's as close as we can get. As close as we can get to my nightmare scenario of having to walk away from Rangers because we've got Saudi Arabian or Qatari money or something like that, without actually doing it, and the guys for Greenock, he'd probably get great shag pile carpets, and you would go on fantastic with him, and maybe even go and play a round of golf with him or something like that. But then something would come up, and it'd just be like money above everything else. And I don't like that, but it's what we need at Rangers right now. What we've been up against, 2012, scorched earth policy, as far as I'm concerned, for all of the big opponents, the people whose away ends, whose shitty, dangerous away ends are populated throughout the 70s and 80s and the 90s, and funding the rest of Scottish football, and the bastards just turned their back on us in 2012. Fans of clubs who I was always held out my hand. I was always nice to and during games, you do the songs. There's always a battle going on during the games. But I always worked on the basis it was like going to see a sci-fi film or a horror film. Once you came out the cinema, it was just you knew it wasn't real. And I just liked, as long as people supported their team the same kind of passion I supported mine, and they had an appreciation of the game. I always thought we were united by football, but 2012 I found out different. There was people who wanted us to go out of order. People I'd held my hand out to in various ways throughout my life, just not a word of sympathy from them. Nothing. Guys whose teams had been through administrations as well, and I'd kind of pitched in to help and offered them support. Never once slagged their team or anything like that. When Rangers nearly went under in 2012, these guys were at best, had nothing to say to me, and at worst were actually in my face enjoying it. And I thought, fuck you, fuck the lot of you. And worst of them all was Peter Lawwell's Celtic, who even before we were in financial trouble, were just doing everything, playing dirty in all sorts of ways, all sorts of hysterical ways. So if we have somebody who's been at Manchester United in football terms, what an influence we've now got in football terms, and if we have somebody who has done the things Malcolm Offord has done, we have got a dark Sith Lord, or whatever you call them, Star Wars fans. We've got a pretty evil guy in there. He will have the political weight, even just to walk into a boardroom to negotiate stuff. People will know he can be dirtier than anybody else. He's totally amoral, and fight fire with fire. That's probably what we're going to need. The big thing, the big conversation point, the big talking point with these appointments is the one that's been confirmed, that's been officially announced by the club this week. Patrick Stewart, he's starting on the 16th. He's starting the 16th of December. He's starting the day after that League Cup final against Celtic, which is, even if we lost that game on penalties and we were down to 9 men or something like that, people are going to put it together as that 6 games that Clement's had against Celtic, hasn't won any of them. There's a chance we could get thrashed in that game. We've got Spurs on the Thursday night at Ibrox, who beat Man City at their place by 4-0 on Saturday. So that's a game we could be worried about as well. I think people are seeing these two games one after the other as being the point where Clement could get himself sacked. It could become untenable for him, and I think the people that gave Philip Clement his contract extension, they're leaving the club, they're interim level at the club, whatever. They can now, and they gave the man assurances that just stay with us, Philip. We know we've let you down. They don't have the funds, don't have the resources this summer that you were promised when you arrived last October. Just stick with us. We can see this as a rebuilding season. They can then say it looks like they'll then be able to say, having introduced these guys at the AGM, I think on the 5th of December, without them being soiled by having had actual contact with Ibrox officially at that point in time, they can then say on the 16th of December, sorry, these are new guys. They've got a different head to us, and that's why your head is now rolling, Philip. That's sorry you've got to go. It's not today with us. We had to hand over. You wanted the positions filled. You were talking about the void, the vacuum in our boardroom. Well, we've got it filled now, and that's what these guys have chosen to do. Sorry, mate. Sorry, nothing to do with us. That's what it looks like to a lot of people from the outside. A slight act of cowardice, maybe hypocrisy, covering the steps. We don't know that. We don't know that for sure yet. The manager was saying at the presser yesterday, but he couldn't talk about the team. He couldn't talk about this game against Nice. He was just being asked about his own position. He confirmed that he'd met Patrick Stewart, I think, after the Dundee United game, and that's maybe where the rumours stemmed from, apart from the willingness of the mainstream media to have Rangers in a state of complete flux and hysteria. That's where the rumours had stemmed from about him having been sacked on Saturday night. I'm not at that stage. I think it is a rebuild. I think it's been pretty apparent that we're downsizing, and what the manager said yesterday was that people judging what you've done the last year, Philip, it was a question at the press conference. He's saying, no, it's not the last year. It's what we did. It was like 4 months. Basically, the club's gone back to square one. In the summer, we lost so many players. We haven't brought in the same quality or amount of players, and we're obviously struggling, and it's a reset. Now, the question is, what is the backstop to that reset? Is it he's been told in the summer, finishing second's okay in the league this season, but maybe no lower than second. And then Aberdeen coming in just playing above their, playing out their skin. Hopefully it's coming off the rails now with Aberdeen, but that's not something you can really hold against Philip Clement. We had one go at playing them, obviously, but they were playing well, Aberdeen, when they beat us at Pittodrie. Even though they drew 3 each with Hibs the other night, they still scored some cracking goals. They're looking very good this season. But if we finish third, we've got no chance of getting into the Champions League next season. Second place gets the second qualifying round, I think. First place, though, gets the first qualifying round this season. Even whoever wins the league this season in Scotland is not guaranteed to be in the Champions League group stage next season, thanks to guys like Patrick Stewart. But that's... So I don't know if we want to take the chance of even finishing third, getting into the Europa League, and just hoping that Celtic and Aberdeen don't then make it to the group stages of the Champions League next season. I don't know what the situation is going to be, but for me, it is a rebuild. And I think there's a lot of talk with Rangers support about getting a caretaker manager. We're going to have Rangers fans are saying things are going to have to get worse before they get better. But they're saying that while talking about sacking Philip Clement, because they cannot take the reality of what things getting worse looks like. You might as well have a guy who's managing that, as far as I'm concerned. And I think he is managing it. I still don't think, even though we're so slow and what have you in the first half on Saturday, I think there's reasons for that. Dundee United being late affects us worse. We saw what happened with us arriving at Dens Park late last season. We win 5-0. It's Dundee. It's the team that's waiting for you that it puts off. So that's one reason perhaps for the slow start on Saturday. I think it's like there's talk, get a caretaker. Rangers fans are wanting to get a caretaker manager in. So we get a manager in who is, the players know is going to leave in a few months. They know for a fact he's going to leave in a few months. Somehow that's going to get better performances. That is just a cover, as far as I'm concerned. For Rangers fans who, like myself, have talked long and hard about how this season the one thing we can't do is sack the manager before Christmas. We can't lose the manager before Christmas for a fourth season in a trot. That's one thing we've got to end, apart from anything else. So I think it's been subtly changed because they realise they're going against their own word, and it's been subtly changed to, no, I was saying we don't want to get a new manager in at this time of the year for the fourth season in the trot. So if we get a guy in who's a caretaker, that doesn't count as being a new manager. We get the new manager in the summer, like it's got to the point where, because Steven Gerrard came in the summertime, because he came in at the end of a season and then won the league. That's now the winning formula. It's like we don't come in October, November, because that you get infected You get infected with failure straight away. Let us tidy the place up. Let's get the Hoover going and get the place nice and tidy for you coming in, Mr. New Manager. So everything's pristine and tidy, and you can come in at the end of the Scottish Cup final. What club? And I mean, unless the caretaker manager is going to be, unless it's Steve Davis or Graham Murty or Stuart McCall or Jimmy Nicholl or Ian Durrant or Tommy McLean or Willie Bloody Thornton, it's going to be a new guy anyway. He's going to be new for a start. So it is a new person, but it's somebody coming in who we already know is going to be leaving in a few months. How is he going to get the best of the players? What world does a manager coming in later than he should let that manager do a better job? Get the guy in to learn the ropes. We could just look at that last season. Philip Clement came in and learnt the ropes, learnt what Ibrox was all about. He learnt the Rangers support. While doing that, he managed to get us back top of the league for a wee while, something we never thought was going to happen. Won us a League Cup and got us our first victory against Spanish opposition in Spanish soil. That's a wee kind of apprenticeship. And this season he's starting again, and we can't seem to take the idea that we have to reset again. It was a reset under Mark Warburton. It was a reset under Stephen Gerrard. It was a reset, obviously, when we started in the third division. We're having to go through these little. It happens in waves. We're doing a comeback, but we're swimming against a tide that was created in 2012. So you're going to end up having moments where it goes really well, and you just kind of fall through an oncoming wave, and you find yourself in a European final. You think, oh my God, we just won the league without losing a game, and then you're getting pulled back all the time as well, and you're having to keep restarting. But the restarts are getting shorter. And there's better people involved, more Rangers-minded people, better suited to the job. We're getting the infrastructure sorted out as well. That's taken decades. As I say, I think it'll be the early 2030s before we're retaining league titles again. And maybe that's my problem. I just feel as if this is the way things should go. But I'm watching these adverts, and I've taken too long in this pod, but it bears saying. There's a lot of adverts on just now, or maybe it's because my algorithm is just saying the guy's a Rangers supporter, send them lots of stuff about mental health. These apps you can get. I've never had therapy, and obviously I need it. I don't feel as if I've been depressed or anything like that. But then look at the state of me. I'm medicating with alcohol and fatty food, so that's a form of depression, I would imagine. But it seems all these adverts for like mental health apps, therapy apps, and they seem to all involve somebody sitting. They seem to involve people just getting better instantly, and everything being okay, and the person being told that nothing's their fault. The world's really been shit to them, and they're great. It just seems like the kind of stuff that's it's self-aggrandising, selfish bastards that you've met throughout your life and made your life a misery. It's the stuff that they love to hear. They love folk telling them that they're absolutely fine and everything's everybody else's fault. There's an advert. There's a guy sitting in a car. He's got a suit on, he's in a car. I mean, that, from what I know about people who are depressed, he's already winning to actually be out of the house, to be fully dressed and to have a motor. But he's sitting in a car and he's feeling bad about something. He talks to this app and it just goes, actually, you're giving yourself a hard time. You're a great guy. And he goes, oh, so that's it. That's the therapy that's been offered by these apps. There's a Bupa advert for Bupa. All the great things Bupa can offer you. It doesn't mention the bill that they offer you at the end of it. Slaughtering our NHS. But there's a kind of 6 second. I don't even know if it's 6 seconds, probably 3 seconds, and it shows you 3 successive clips that sums up their therapy, the therapy they can give you. I don't know if it's psychiatric, I don't know if it's just psychological, whatever, emotional therapy, whatever it is, but it's a young guy sitting on a couch, and you can see a kind of shadow of the therapist who's in the foreground, the person who's, the boffin who's doing the talking to him. And the boy's on the sofa, and he's a young man, and in the first photograph, it basically flashes 3 different images of him, and the first one he's sitting, and he's got a jacket on, and he's all fully zipped up, and he's got a hat on, because he's wearing a hat indoors. If that's not a sign of somebody who's mental, what is, And he's not saying anything, he's sullen, he's looking downward, and it goes to the second, he's sitting in the exact same position for all 3 shots. The second one, he's got a heavy shirt on, the t-shirt underneath, and he's still kind of frowning, but the hat's away. The outdoor clothing is away. He's going inside. He's taking his layers off. The layers are getting peeled back. And he's kind of, he's engaging with the therapist without saying anything. The third clip, that's it. Just Jane's t-shirt, big kind of day glow, is it green t-shirt or some big bright t-shirt. He's smiling, he's laughing, he's got the arms extended out of the sofa, he's totally chillaxed, and he's like, yeah, I'm amazing, I'm a great guy, nothing was my fault. That's the idea, I think, that's been sold about how therapy works. And that's the idea I think some Rangers fans are taking on board, that we were supposed to win the league. It's how far we are away from winning the SPFL Premiership is how we judge Philippe Clement's job as Rangers manager. It's all about, we just get to, if we're not getting straight back to the top, that's it, get them to, have you been watching this? Have you been watching what's happened in the last decade and more at Rangers? It's going to be much more like therapy, real therapy, to get to the issues. You're probably going to find out you were touched up as a kid or something like that. You're going to find out something horrific about your childhood. You're going to have to confront it. You're going to be in agony. It's going to be painful. It's going to be a horrible process. But as long as you know it's all moving in the right direction, and that's going to be okay. That's real therapy. Usually involves things getting a lot worse before they get better. And Rangers fans saying this thing, well, at least we like to see some progress. We like to see signs. I don't mind if we get beat as long as there's signs of progress. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We do not like seeing Rangers get beat at all. We do mind us getting beat all the time. We sometimes mind us winning by not enough goals as well. There is no way, we heard the whole thing, we got this half-assed idea, as usual, from our interpretation of what was happening across the road. Postecoglou ends up winning a double and a treble, or a League and Cup double, not the double in his first season. We stopped that. He wins a treble in his second season, so he's a flying success with Celtic. But his first 6 months, it was a bit ropey. Some right ropey results, but there was a few Celtic fans saying, but I can see what the guy's doing. We should stick by him. So I think we've taken it on board that we need to see that. But they were seeing the same as us. They were seeing failure. They were seeing, short term, the guy was losing games and dropping silly points. They had the same amount of knee-jerk fans giving it, this guy's got to go, he's got to get the bullet. We have developed this idea that as long as we can see some sort of progress, when Rangers drop points that we did on Saturday, you can't see progress because it's bad. You can't see progress. But this is when you break something into its component parts, when you give it proper therapy, when you make it better in a real sense, not in an app or a Bupa advert sense. It can get pretty harrowing at times. Eventually, it'll be worth it in the long run. I think we should stick with Philippe Clement. If he wins tonight, it's not going to help him. But, what the hell? This pod's going on long enough. You've already switched off, so I might as well enjoy myself. What was that? Page 196, 197. So, I had coffee out in the terrace with the team manager of one of the big cycle manufacturers. He said it had been a very pleasant race and would have been worth watching if Bottecchia had not abandoned it at Pamplona. The dust had been bad, but in Spain the roads were better than in France. Bicycle road racing was the only sport in the world, he said. Had I ever followed the Tour de France? Only in the papers. The Tour de France was the greatest sporting event in the world. Following and organising the road races had made him know France. Few people know France. All spring and all summer and all fall he spent on the road with the bicycle road racers. Look at the number of motor cars now that followed the riders from town to town in a road race. It was a rich country and more sportive every year. It would be the most sportive country in the world. It was a bicycle road racing did it. That and football. He knew France. La France sportive. He knew road racing. We had a cognac. Enjoy your cognacs, folks. Enjoy your cognacs. Have a little cognac out in the terrace while you're watching Rangers playing the Côte d'Azur against a team from the most sportive country in the world. And let's turn that Côte d'Azur blue.